Whoa. All I gotta say is wow. Straight heat, straight heat.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive.
Good afternoon. We are back with another exciting episode. I'm Elijah, and I'm joined with my great friend in percussion, Ricardo. And we're the host of Hbcu Drumline Talk. Today, we're stopping in Durham, North Carolina to talk about DOA, North Carolina Central University Drumline. We'd like to welcome Mr. Hudson, percussion instructor for DOA.
What's going on, y'all? Thank y'all for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on.
No problem, no problem. So we're not gonna waste no time. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Mr. Hudson, tell us about your journey with percussion.
All right. Here's the gag. Actually, me being a percussionist happened by luck or maybe fate. I actually in sixth grade is when I started doing band. I actually signed up for trumpet, and the band director had too many people signing up, and my second choice was percussion. So he put me in the percussion section, and the rest was history. So I did percussion all through middle school, high school. My program, H.J. McDonough, was where I first started playing as a middle school. Then New Bern High School's core style school in Eastern North Carolina. Then I marched at North Carolina A&T State University. I came in 2006, cold steel, KK side, snare side, all that good stuff. Then after that, I switched over to the instructing side. So my senior year being at A&T, in the spring, I took on a group called Hbcu Middle School, which is now known as Swan Middle School. They had a drum line, and I worked with them from 2012 to about 2018, a little bit of 19, but mainly stopping at 18. And then while I was there, my second year there, I ended up taking on Dudley High School. So I had both groups at the same time. I had Dudley from 2013 to 2019, 20-ish. Because when I took the job here at Central, I kind of finished out what I was doing at Dudley, and then, focused mainly on Central. Even though I do stop by Dudley, when I can, but it's more of like a free clinician in a sense, and not necessarily the instructor or assistant director like I was.
Okay, you've been busy.
Yeah, I like to stay busy. It keeps me out of trouble.
That's what's up.
Yeah, man, that's quite a resume there. So obviously you got your start early, and then you were a teacher at a middle school, and then you moved up to the high school ranks, and now you moved into the college ranks at this point in time. So congratulations on that. We wanted to say that. And since this leads into our next setup, being that you went through middle school, high school, and now on the college level, just for our percussion instructors out there who are thinking about doing the same thing, can you talk to us about some of the challenges that percussion instructors face with when they move from middle school, high school, and then to a college level? In regards to percussion, of course.
I'm gonna try to not talk too long on this. I could probably do a whole presentation on that. So I guess the first thing challenge-wise is, of course, we'll just start in order. With middle school, of course, 9 times out of 10, they are true beginners. It's very rare that you get a student in middle school that was already playing, unless you just come from an area where, music is, more prevalent in the elementary school, or, they have a lot of drill teams and stuff like that. So, but in most cases you won't. So you got to really have a system in place. If not, the students are just going to go for what they know, or they're going to go for what they see, because the middle school mind is a lot more impressionable. So you got to really hone them in. And also, I will say this with the middle school group, it's okay to use little isms because they're still in a developing stage cognitively. So you kind of want to make sure you meet them where they are. So as you're teaching them how to read, it's okay to use little isms. For example, the band director at Hbcu, for 1 EN, he would say Taco Bell just to kind of keep their brains, thinking, or for what was the other one? Fried chicken was for 1 EN. So little stuff like that kind of helped them kind of build their rhythm vocabulary. I know in middle school, we focus more on the rhythm vocabulary than the rudimental vocabulary, because if you can get the rhythms and learning the notes, the rudiments will come easier. So that's probably the main thing, just kind of trying to move fast. And when you get into high school, you definitely, me personally, I try to keep reinforcing reading. Of course, every child is not going to master it to the level that you want them to, but you still want to make sure you continue to expose them. And sometimes you might get a little pushback because, the high school kids, the learning curve is a little different, because their brains are a little bit more developed. And so they want to move faster and they want to do what they see, whatever college, do. And so, one thing that you'll run into is making sure you try to build like an identity for that group. Because, again, kids are impressionable. So they're going to want to do what they see. So you got to kind of make sure that you are tight on what you know and tight on what you're teaching so that they'll buy into your system. Then as far as the collegiate, for the collegiate level, it's a little more tricky because sometimes you'll have an expectation of all the students coming in, and then you'll realize quickly, and Mr. Powell, I'm sure you probably can relate to this, that what you think an entry-level college musician isn't always what you get. And so you have to, me personally, fortunately for me, I'd already taught middle and high. So I already know how to walk you through that process. But for some people that may not get that, you might, come straight out of your master's or whatever, you go straight into collegiate level. That's something that you're going to have to be faced with. You're going to have to learn how to, realize, okay, I'm on a collegiate level, but I got to go down and get this student. But the pace is going to be different as far as how fast you build them back up. So that's something to be looking out for. And you can't just assume that they know because they're in college, because some programs operate differently and stuff like that. So that was the short version. Tried to give the shortest possible because we could talk an hour about that.
Yes, that was really good. You really hit the points. It was really quick. For anyone who's interested in doing what you have done, going from the middle school to the high school level, and now on to the college level, you pretty much put it down. Hey, these are the challenges on each of the levels. You still got to be able to teach. That's the bottom line. So out of that, so good. So speaking of that, we want to move into DOA's process in regards to the auditioning process and what you have done, what you have brought to the table at this point. Could you talk to us about the audition process there at North Carolina Central for DOA's Drumline?
All right. So before I answer what you said about the audition process, I do want to give a shameless plug. On March 19th here on the campus of North Carolina Central University, we'll be hosting a drum percussion clinic. It'll start at 10 a.m. and end at 6. If you want to register, my contact email will be in the link below on the video, because I'm sure you're going to do that for me. Then also the Band Blast, April 23rd of this same year, which is a full band event. On both events, you will be able to audition. So if you want to come down in person and do that, I'm going to welcome you in. All right.
There it is. Case closed. Sounds like it's going to be a great event.
The first group I walked into was pretty much the traditional audition process, to my knowledge. But they were already selected by the time I was officially got the job, which is the typical, submit your audition video with your rudiments, prepared piece, the basics or whatever. So then, COVID hit. And so our director, he did a push for recruitment. And so we ended up waiving auditions for the season that we just had. Now with percussion, I kind of had to bend the rules a little bit. And so, what I did was, I accepted anybody that came in, but what I did was I said, okay, because of the rule given by the director, we're going to honor that, but I'm gonna make you do what's called a placement audition. So I can kind of see where you are. So I got a list of rudiments that I send out in a document. I send it out to them in a Google Drive document, and they can click through. Of course, it's your standard 40, of course, and then about 8 hybrids. No, it's 10 now. About 10 hybrids that we use the most in our cadences, just so I can know that you know those. So if you're playing a snare, you definitely got to check off on all of those. I mean, you might not be burning them up, but as long as you can get through them, all right, I can work with you. Everybody, no matter who you are, has to go. We have a timing exercise that we send out. So everybody has to go through that, because that's just your basis of understanding rhythms. Now, for people getting scholarships, yours is a lot more traditional, because I can't offer you any money off of just a walk up. So like if you're getting scholarship, then of course you're doing the full prepared piece. You're doing your scales, the mallet piece, just so we make sure that we're getting what we're paying for. So yeah, I did a lot of those on Zoom last year. But this year I did something different. What I did was I invented something, well, maybe not invented, but what I did this year was I allowed students to intern with us. Mainly, and this is my way to push to get for the local kids, like the North Carolina crowd. So what I did was every Saturday, you're allowed to come in and intern with the Drumline. And what I do is I basically kind of, teach you some of the things that I'm expecting you to know. So then that way, I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone. Number one, you've been around us enough, it makes you want to stay, because as you're learning this stuff for us, it's going to help you with whatever you're doing in your high school, because it's going to be a tad bit, further on the next level. And then two, it kind of gives that more interpersonal piece to the audition process. Whereas before, I've noticed that a lot of students, it's almost like test taking. A lot of students, they don't do well on an audition, but if you really got a chance to go by their program, you will realize, oh, this student actually knows a lot more than what this audition showed me. And then vice versa. Some kids audition very well and the work ethic is not there. So I kind of try to use that. It's almost, the intern process is almost like a long-term audition, but the way you go about it, you don't feel that pressure of, I'm standing in front of a panel, or I got to make this video on Zoom and I got to edit it 30 times because I want it to be perfect. So that's the way I kind of approached it this year. Of course, I'll still accept, the traditional videos for people that are like out of state. Of course, you're not going to come down every Saturday to play with us. You know what I mean? But so that's how we're doing it this year.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, you brought up some good points on that. And, I'm going to take a side note to that, because if someone were to come to me and say, hey, Mr. Reese, I'm interested in going to North Carolina Central's Drumline in the past before you came onto the cast and everything, I would have said, hey, I already know you can play, right? But these guys down here, they're like the Ric Flairs of the HBCU Drumline, where they are styling and profiling. Case closed. You not only can you need to know how to play, can you twirl? Can you know how to profile? Do you know how to twirl and everything? And then I would probably say, hey, the last time I saw them, and this is from Elijah myself's point of view, like I had a question, man. Like at one point, I thought you couldn't get on your drum line if you weren't no less than like 6 feet tall.
Yeah, you have a look.
6 feet tall, because everybody was had a specific height. And I was like, man, this looked like everybody on this squad is no less than 6 feet tall. So yeah. I'm glad you really brought that to light. So thank you. That was some good points that you put there.
I actually enjoyed that era of DOA, because it gave a look. And I think there's a question. Well, I think we'll get deeper into that when we talk about some other things. But yeah. I'm going to go back to that in a minute.
So all right, good. Thank you for those points. Thanks.
All right, we're going to the next question. Let's check out this video real quick. So well, this question would be a two-part. What's the thought process behind this warm-up? Because it's very funky. And also, speaking to the younger drummers, what's the purpose of a warm-up? Instead of just, starting to play a drum, just, cold turkey, what's the purpose of warming up?
All right. I'm gonna answer the second question first because that's the easiest one. So the purpose of the warm-up is to address something that you're going to do, and also to literally, stretch out whatever muscles you need in your wrist and arm if that's being applied. So that's just the simple answer right there. Moving on to this specific warm-up, it was made to address a few things. So like the beginning part is just, your typical, eighth note pattern, because I like from all my warm-ups to transition from one to the other. So it's always easy to come out of a eighth note piece. But in this one, I lied. I'm at the wrong part of the warm-up. Let's go back to the beginning. It's an accented piece. My bad. So you accent your top beat, and then you got to tighten up on your bottom beats. You're playing a 3, dig-a-dot, 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 but you're accenting the 1. And that's just to kind of do that. I call it muscle confusion, where it's like, you got to think about what you're doing a little bit. Also, naturally, in most double and triple beat warm-ups, most people make you accent all 3 beats. You know what I'm saying? They want them nice and even, where in this case, like, no, sometimes you might not always have that. So part of the reason why that warm-up is like that, actually, a friend of mine, his name is Miko Shoulders. He had came up and chilled with me. This was like way before he even, not saying that he's wasn't popular then, but like before he was like as known as he is now. It's like circa 2013, 2014. He came up and chilled with me and my homeboy Cash. And we just went outside. We went over to Dudley because I lived by Dudley at the time. And we was just chopping or whatever on the drums or whatever. And we were gridding. It was like, yo, let's do the flam drag grid. Boom. So we flam drag grid him. But when we get to once we passed the second partial, he was doing the second beat of the second partial, and most people go to the third, straight to the third partial. And I was like, whoa, hold on, player. What you doing over there? what you doing over there? And so then I started thinking, and I was like, oh, shoot, I understand. Like, that gives you a different level of control. And then also that was, I was about to say, was it logistically sound, though? Because there are 4 beats in that rudiment. You know what I'm saying? Even though there's 3 movements of the hand, in a sense, there are 4 beats in the rudiment. So if you're going to grid, you need to do what you said. So you got to do all 4 beats. I said, okay. Yeah. But that leads into the second part of the warm-up, where they're in the triplet and they're accenting every other beat, because in that same vein, you have to be loose and then quickly tighten your hand back up to hit that second accent. Like the way he did it in the flam drag grid is the same way we did it slowly, where we playing tripola. So what I'm saying? So it kind of addressed that. So it was like basically you did it one way coming in, the top beat is accented, then on the way out into the next part of the warm-up, the upbeat is accented. So then moving into the next part, ironically, the next part was actually something that I wrote probably back in like 2012 that I just never used. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna place this little piece here to kind of like, the warm-up starts one way, and then it kind of gives you like a little groove section. Then it goes to another little section that I call the Annie, are you okay section, where it drops down and the snares are doing this. Now, in the original version, it was just supposed to be like a little twirl or something. But because here at Central, we do this thing called, what I call tucking. Well, they call it tucking, where like the way that they address their left hand, it's the visual piece. I need a stick so you can see what I'm talking about. A mallet, but whatever. So you want, so your stick is vertical or whatever. So I put that in there just to kind of stretch that muscle, and just so you can kind of, get a chance to hit that checkpoint. Then this little visual right here is something that they do in a lot of cadences. So I'm always like, whatever you're doing, your warm-up should reflect to whatever you're going to later. You know what I mean? Then the last part, the part that everybody likes, is really just a song. It's Take It to the Head by Chris Brown. Yeah. And I just kind of took it and did a little extra. I did a little extra with it because like I said, I wrote it before, and I wrote it one way, like more true to the song. But when I taught it to Central, I had to adjust it. And so I put the polyrhythm piece in there, and then the accent and the left piece, because that's something that's a trademark at Central, is the whole left hand approach. And then I kind of changed the tenor part a little bit so it wouldn't sound like, because I think there's a clip of Jackson playing the song, and I didn't want them to sound too much alike. So, I made some adjustments to that just so nobody be like, oh, well, y'all jocking, blase.
Yeah.
I don't got time for all that. But well, the funny thing is I actually wrote that warm-up in 2013 or 14, somewhere around there. No, I lied. It was 2015. I actually wrote the original version of it for the CBA, which is supposed to be the Carolina Band All-Stars. And ironically, myself and a guy named Xavier, who's a DOA, me and him were supposed to be like the section leaders, I guess. And so it's kind of funny that full circle, some of that stuff that I wrote, either like bouncing an idea off of him or just having in general, ended up being used here. But I just had to, revamp it so to make more sense for this group. Because I got a lot of cadences I just haven't used. Like I went through, sometimes you probably dealt with this before, like you go through a writing spree where you just writing, and then there's nowhere for it to go. So, yeah.
Okay. So going to the next question, talk to us about DOA's choice of sticks and drum heads and why you chose those particular items.
All right. So with the snare stick, we're using the BIOS. And to keep it hot, there's two reasons why. Number one, I'm buying black. Harvey, and Harvey's my LB. Let me just keep it what it is. Harvey's my LB. I'm gonna support him. But also the gag is this. So one of the types of snare heads we use is called a black X head. And I don't know if Harvey did this. Well, I know he didn't do this on purpose because he likes to play on Kevlar a little more. But the BIOS stick is very, very similar to the Silver Fox. And the Silver Fox is really good for getting sound out of Mylar and suede heads. So that was another reason why I chose the BIOS, because I knew that the black X head would get is it's got a suede top layer and it's got a Mylar bottom layer. So, that's part of the reason why I did that. So that was a twofold piece in that. And also it does good enough on the Kevlar as well, because we play for the snares, we play on the black X head, like I said, mainly for our outdoor stuff. Or if we're just playing something where we want it to resonate more, and then we'll play on Kevlar for like indoor stuff or for specific events. For example, when we did the Thurgood Marshall thing, I already knew ahead of time how there's no nice way to say this. Most entities that don't deal with a band often don't know how to record a band. So I already knew that there was going to be a possibility. So I was like, okay, let's go with the Kevlar stuff for this. And I'm glad I did because, so that's the basis. Tenors use a control sound, which is the black dot. And they use the Evans because we were running two sets. I had what was basically the outdoor set, which we would call the flappers because they were lower pitch. And it's kind of like a bird reference. Like you got to flap to get off the ground if you lower. And then the high tension ones were called the flyers because they were higher. So for the low tension head, they use the control sound. And then for the high tension head, we use the Evans Chrome, and sometimes I'd be going back and forth between which one I like the most. But it's mainly just for how they blend. Then going to the basses for the outdoor sound, we're using control sounds at first, which is the black dot. So, you basically got all dotted heads on bass, snare, and tenor for the outdoor sound. And then for the indoor sound, they were using Evans, the MX2 series, which, is gives you a tighter sound, and it was more controlled because we foamed them a little more in the beginning. So that was that. So one was basically tuned more for resonance, and one set was more for, for clarity, depending on what group of people you're around. Because certain regions of people, they'll hear the black dots and they can understand everything that's being played because that's what they're used to. Yeah. You go to another region, they'll act like they don't understand what's being played, and then vice versa. So I want us to be a little marketable. So it was a twofold thing.
Okay, so you changing heads every 2 weeks?
No, we got two sets of drums.
Two sets of drums, okay. I'm about to say
heck no, I'm not doing that.
Yo.
Okay. No. But now coming up though, we ended up taking the black dots off and we replaced the black dots with the Remo Power Max. And the gag on the Remo Power Max is a lot of people don't know The Remo Power Max, the way it's designed, is really just a black dot with the dot covering up the whole head. The bottom, the inside part is a Mylar with a control sound dot, and then the outside is just your regular. What is that material? Whatever that material is called. My brain. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Man, Mr. Hudson, you brought up some good points, and you've really talked about sound and why you guys use heads. You know, there's not too many lines out there who have a two sets of marching lines, right? Two sets of marching drums. So that's good to hear that, you know, you guys can switch up as you need to, depending on where you're playing at. And that pretty much transitions into the next setup here. And EP and myself, we love to do our homework, you know, on the folks that we talk to, and especially your line, out of personal experience playing against North Carolina Central. And with that in mind, we're going to take a look at about 4 videos, 4 short clips here. And these videos range from 2008, 2014, 2019, and 2021. So we'll be right back. We'll let you guys check these out, and we'll come right back. Okay, so after watching those clips, and you spoke very detailed about, you know, certain heads that you guys use in regards to sound. So in your opinion, Mr. Hudson, how has DOA been able to maintain consistency throughout the years with their sound and intensity?
So, well, this, how can I answer this? I'll say it this way. So let's focus on the intensity first.
Yeah.
Because that's something that has been much more consistent. It was just the approach and the intensity are what the way we approached it was different. So for example, if we go back to the 2008 line, that's, Marcus, well, he wasn't playing then, but that's Jeff, Kev, JC, those are like the main figureheads, Turtle, older guys that march in that era. So that's that era, or we could call that who was the director then? The Reed era.
Reed,
you know, the way they approached intensity, one was just the way they look, like we talked about earlier, like all of them are tall, you know what I'm saying? Like Kev is 6 feet, JC is like 6 feet, Keenan 6 feet, like all these older, the only person that was close to my height is Jeff. So you got all these tall guys and you know the one short guy, but they all had this look to them. And like the way that they approached their drums were like intense. Like if you were to stand beside them, you'll hear the you know what I'm saying, of the wind or whatever. But also another way that they approached intensity was the way they tuned during that 2008 era. You know, like it was the main thing they talk about is resonance, because that era they wanted to fill up, you know, whatever stadium they were in, because they only really played outside. Matter of fact, they hardly did any indoor shows, to my knowledge, during that time. Of course, you might do your pep rallies here and there, but the major thing that they were doing were outdoor things, and more specifically, stands battles. You know what I mean? Like one thing that's always been a DOA trope is, you know, the cadences are designed for battling. So the tuning concept that they went with to give you that intensity was to make sure that everything went across the field. You know what I mean? So now, of course, you know, somebody standing super, super up close, they may not appreciate it as much. But if you go back about 10, 15 yards, you're going to understand, you know, well, you should understand, you know, why it's going that way. So now that was that era, you know what I'm saying? That's the instructor then was Dr. Lamont Longhorn, who's not NT now. And Kawachi Clemens was there right before Longhorn was there. So that era kind of, you know, merges together because they kind of kept that same concept or whatever. So boom. When we get into the Chambers era, you know, the tuning changed, and we'll talk about that a little more once we look at another video. But as far as the intensity is concerned, like they were more intense as far as like rudimental precision. Like that was the way he approached being intense. Like if you look at the way that they played, like they might not have looked as like hard and aggressive as far as like just standing there, but like when you watch them play, you'd be like, oh, okay, these boys are not playing around on these drums. You know what I'm saying? So like that was just a different way to approach the same thing. You know what I mean? So the level of intensity, I feel like, you know, stayed consistent, but just what we did to make that level of consistency change. So then like when I came in, what my goal was to try to balance the two together the best that I could, which kind of goes back to why we did some of the things with the tuning as well, to have, you know, different pieces, because it kind of reflected the two dominant eras of DOA.
Yeah, Mr. Hudson, well put. Thank you.
Okay. So going to the next question, you know, of course, we still in this little, I guess, pandemic. How did it help or hurt the line during the pandemic? Starting, you know, 20, when it first started. Did it help the line, hurt it?
It was a little bit of both. It hurt the line because at the end of the day, you know, performance is a big portion of being in the marching band. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, I'm working you, but you don't really get to show it but so much. So that's why we kind of started doing like the videos and stuff. And that was cool, but there's nothing like that interpersonal feeling of feeling the crowd and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm not saying that they weren't motivated, because they definitely were, but like, you know, sometimes they would get a little restless, which is expected. You know what I mean? Like you get a little restless. Now on the flip side, the pandemic really gave us time to like really hone in on like what we wanted to do and how we wanted to look when we reemerged. You know, like we really took the time to like dive into these cadences that we have, you know, and bring back some of the cadences. Like there were a few cadences they weren't playing that kind of got lost in the sauce over the years. So I was like, you know what, we got the time, we're gonna use it. You know, that was one of my main things, and we're still doing that now. So that was definitely the piece on that. And also, like, I got to address the form and the technique a lot more, and whatever changes we were making a lot more and a lot more gradually, because we weren't, you know, doing full performances. Like, again, yeah, we did the live videos a lot, but it's just a different ballgame when you're doing like full performances every week. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Good.
So with that being said, I know you pretty much stepped in, and how long have you been at North Carolina Central now?
This is my first real year, but this is my second year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think let's just talk about the first real year, right? Obviously you did some great work with the line, really solid. Can you talk to us about some of your memorable moments and your least memorable moments during this first full year?
Let's see, memorable moments. There was a few. So the MEAC SWAC was a good one because of the way we were received, at least in person. Matter of fact, this is gonna kill two birds with one stone. So in person, when people heard us in person, the way the drums were tuned and the way they felt, because I don't know if you've ever heard the quote, people don't always remember what you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. Yeah. Everybody that was in the stadium, they were like, oh my God, we can feel y'all drums. The way that we feel when you're playing, even Mr. Hollins, when we went to do our sound check and the drum line struck up and he was way across the field, and you can feel somebody looking at you. I turned and looked at him, he looked at me, and he gave me that nod. And it was crazy because we kind of mixed it up. I brought the black dot basses, but I brought the Kevlar snares. What tenors did we bring? We brought the black dot tenors or whatever. So it's we kind of mixed up what would have been separated, which was great because, like I said, in the stadium, the way it felt in the stadium, the way people responded, Alcorn's band, when they was walking by and we were marching in, I seen looking at them bobbing their heads and stuff. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So it was just good to feel like that. But then the least memorable happens from the same thing. Even though it sounded so great in person, they didn't translate well on the camera on certain people's clips. Yeah. I think it was the Showtime Web clip. The drums sounded totally different in the way that they felt and sounded in the stadium. Now, I'm gonna just leave that there because you can't control what equipment people use. So that's something you got to be mindful of. That people gonna record whatever equipment they have.
Yeah, you actually bring up a good point, and just piggybacking on what you said right there, the exchange that you guys had outside with Alcorn at the MEAC swag battle, when you had multiple camera angles, and there was different people with their phones, their cameras out there recording and everything. You're right. It sounded, each line sounded different depending on which video you watched. Each line sounded different, depending on which type of headphones you had on watching the clip. So that's a very good point that you bring up.
Yeah, so that was that. I think another one was doing the virtual thing with Cold Steel, because we didn't get to do a face-to-face battle, so that was kind of I guess a precursor to eventually it's gonna happen. Harvey's my line brother for Cold Steel. Eventually, at some point in time, it's gonna happen. So it's kind of a teaser. You know what I'm saying? Okay, we did that. We ended up winning the competition, but we'll just leave it at that. We ended up winning, so that was cool. We got the little, matter of fact, I need to find out what happened with that check, because I think it went to the school and it didn't go to us. But that's another story. So that was good. That was good. And then some things that we're working on now, because those things I feel help lead to some of the things we're working on now. We're working on a deal with a drumhead company. I'm not gonna say which one yet because I'm waiting for that to go through. And then I got an article, a small little portion that'll be featured in and Percussion Art Society in the next coming magazine. I'll have a small snippet in there. So, those three things kind of all, correlate together, in my opinion.
Okay. And that's real good. So, that pretty much leads into the next thing here. Obviously you're there, and I think any instructor who's on the college, or just any percussion instructor anywhere, always wants to leave their mark, right? Wherever they're going to, or wherever they're at, and whenever they're leaving, right? So as an instructor, for your school's line, what's your long-term goal? What's your long-term vision for North Carolina Central's Drumline DOA going forward?
To be the Drumline of America. All jokes aside, that's my little gag, because anytime somebody asks me what DOA means, I'd be like Drumline of America. But all seriousness, first thing, I do want to be here for a good portion of time. Like I try to, at the bare minimum, have at least 2 generations of kids come in. So the average college student graduates in 4 to 5 years. So I want to be here for at least, at the bare minimum, 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's that. So with that being said, like the first thing that I want to do as far as my vision is concerned is one of our goal words is called Sankofa, which means to go back and get it. There are a lot of things that both eras of the previous instructors had that were of value. And so what I wanted to do is make sure that we create an amalgam of those things, so that to make sure that there's no separation between the history. Like I come from, and I do a good job of not bringing the things that I learned at A&T here. But one thing that I am used to is having like a full, the history of the line and the camaraderie of the line, like being solid, the tradition. Like I'm very, very, very strong on tradition. Like, for example, like there's some cadences that I make them learn that you'll probably never hear. And that's okay, because if you call yourself a member of this drum line, you should be able to relate to anybody going all the way back to 2007. You know what I'm saying? And really, preferably, you should be able to go back further than that. You know what I mean? Because like even with, and this kind of what I did at Dudley and ACOT. Like at Dudley, like Dudley's Ice Code was starting in '85. Most of the people from '85, there's at least a set of cadences that we can run together with my kids that's playing in 2019. You know what I'm saying? Of course, naturally, there are going to be a few things that you don't know, but I wanted to be to the point where, like, no matter who came in from Central that came to watch the group, that they felt nostalgia. You know what I mean? Because you can't progress if you don't honor, your past. So that was my major thing. That also, like, with the 2 eras being so different, like I said, just bringing together the things of value. So one thing that, if nothing else, when I leave, I want everybody to be able to say, you know what, we're all one pot of gumbo now. You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, just the regular stuff, like, I want the media saturation to go up. Like we did a little bit better, this year as far as, doing more battles, doing more shows, stuff like that. Get more paid gigs, get more longevity things, like working on this deal I'm trying to work right now, stuff like that. So when I leave, that there's like a system in place that whoever comes in, they're like, okay, boom, the tradition side is already taken care of, boom. The business side, as far as like, oh, well, I can just go to this company because it's already a set deal with this company to do these heads, boom. The system as far as like the way we educate the students, like I actually have a literal system in place from the day you get here. This is the way that we teach you in this order so that you'll come out the way that I want you. So like all those things will be in place. So for the next person, really, it should be like, what's the word? It should be automated almost. I want it to be automated a little bit. And maybe because, I come from an engineering school, I think like an engineer. But that's kind of one of my long-term goals, is just to have this program running so smooth that, like, honestly, I should be able to be at home and not even have to show up and everything just flows the way it's supposed to, Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
cool.
you. Thank you.
All right, so we'll come down to the last question, the bonus question. Mr. Hudson, we're going to take the year you marched at Cold Steel, North Carolina Central, that line going against DOA's current line. Who come out on top? Battle on the 50, face to face.
So make sure I said this right. You said this right. Make sure I heard this right.
Yeah.
So the Central that I marched against versus the Central that I had.
No. Cold Steel, when you march, your line.
Oh, Cold Steel when I marched versus DOA that I'm instructing. Who wins?
Yeah.
I win. No. I win. That's the answer to the question.
Good answer.
But no, seriously, like with that question, is a lot of things. It's so many things that could be involved. Like, for example, if we're doing a show, like an indoor show, it depends on who's judging it. So like, for example, if it's just straight crowd, then, you know, Coach still may get the edge. But if it's judged, then we might get the edge. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And like, if we're doing face-to-face battle, like, you know, we might get the edge because I know that group, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas like that, you know, the group that I marched with, they, we never blocked up against somebody that knew us, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like, so what would either happen is they just didn't know us at all, or they thought they knew us and tried to out cold steal. And that's not going to work. I'm not going to call any names, but it's not going to work. Yeah. So, you know, so it kind of just depends on what the situation was. But again, regardless, I win.
Good answer. Good answer.
Good answer. Real good answer. Good answer. But yeah, everybody, we've pretty much come to an end. This has been an exciting episode, man. Mr. KJ Hudson, we really appreciate you coming on HBCU Drumline today to talk about, you know, North Carolina Central's Drumline DOA. For our folks out there watching, you know, here's the truth. You're hearing it from the person himself, what he expects from the line, what happens on their line, and things that they do like that. Mr. Hudson, do you have any questions for us before we go ahead and cut on out?
No, I don't have any questions for y'all.
Okay.
Not today.
Okay. Well, to our viewers out there, please continue to follow us. We're on Pandora, we're on SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You know, please continue to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Everybody, please continue to be safe, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Again, my name is Ricardo, and we'll check you out next time along with my boy EP the Great.
Peace.
Have a good night.